A lot can happen in a week. Some of it good, some of it bad, some of it downright ugly. When faced with intriguing developments in the week's news, we turn to a rotating panel of non-experts to parse the good, the bad, and the ugly of it all. On today's panel, Vivian Ho, health economist at Rice University and Baylor College of Medicine, Jessica Brown, co-director of Station Theater, and Raul Ramos, associate professor of history at the University of Houston. Vivian, Jessica, Raul, welcome to Houston Matters.
Hi, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Panel, last March, someone purchased a Mega Millions lottery ticket with winning numbers that resulted in $1 million prize, or would have, had it been claimed in time. Alas, the ticket purchased at All Season Food on Antoine wasn't claimed at a lottery center by the state's deadline, which in this case was last Friday. As Houston Public Media's Sarah Grunow reported this week, in Texas, unclaimed lottery cash, even $1 million or more, is reverted back to the state to pay for certain health care, education, or veterans needs. The Texas Lottery Commission didn't say how common unclaimed winning tickets are, but encourages players to double-check their tickets, sign them, and claim prizes within 180 days. $1 million lottery ticket winner goes unclaimed, and the money reverts to the state. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Vivian Ho.
I think it's pretty good with a couple of caveats. So I understand, I feel sorry for the person who purchased the ticket and didn't cash it. $1 million would have been life transforming. However, I feel as though what the State Lottery Commission is saying that they are going to put the money towards is fantastic and will be life transforming for many people. You know, I guess kind of crazy, but it would go towards inpatient care down at hospitals down at the border, and they certainly they're sort of overrun. They could use that money, so that's great, but. You know, there were a couple of caveats on. So first, it was something like if it was postmarked by September 15th, then the person can still collect. And so given the way the post office runs these days, maybe that claim is running around there. Or I hope, they didn't put it in the mailbox and then it didn't get stamped on time. Because I'm wondering, why is Louis DeJoy still Postmaster General? Because certainly those kinds of things could have happened. And then the other caveat is they said they could give extensions in some cases to military personnel. And certainly that's justified if they were, bought the ticket and then were deployed somewhere.
On the first caveat, do you think someone would have $1 million ticket winner and drop it in the mail?
You never know these days, yes, not likely. I would certainly not do that.
I think I'd do that one in person. Mm-hmm. I think that'd be an in-person transaction. But point taken. All right, good, bad, or ugly, Jessica Brown.
I agree with Vivian on this, to be perfectly honest. I think that obviously it's great that someone won. It's bad that they didn't claim their ticket. And the fact that it does go, hopefully, to services at the border. I think they also said something about supporting veterans and some other services like that. I think that that's a great use of that, rather than it just going back into the general fund and not necessarily knowing what it was going straight into. And forgive me because, I don't remember much these days. But didn't the lottery, wasn't the idea when it started out that a lot of it was going to support education too?
Still does.
Okay. And that's more with the purchases of the lottery tickets? Okay. Like I said, memory is out the door. But, I think that it's great when people are able to claim that money. And, hopefully we get some people that are getting some help out of it.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly, Raul.
Well, let me just start by saying I feel these kinds of sin taxes, as we would call it, a tax that is essentially taking advantage of gambling to fund essential services is problematic, to say the least. Certainly in terms of these winnings, the person who won needs it, or they wouldn't be playing the lottery. I mean, I know people play the lottery from all walks of life, but certainly the benefits that come out of the lottery make a bigger impact if you need that money, and especially if you're using money that you need to play the lottery. That's another problem. How about this? Instead of taking advantage of these kinds of mistakes, and that's really what it is. It's probably some mistake. Maybe somebody didn't read the numbers right. I know I need cataract surgery on my right eye. So, I can sympathize if you maybe misread one of the numbers and balled it up and threw it away. That seems to leave a lot to chance. and this is about chance, right? What if we all play the lottery? Let's make it even. Let's just say when we pay taxes, we're playing the lottery and some taxpayer is going to get something back, maybe a tax holiday for an individual or a group, a kind of random assortment. But if we're all going to, if this is what's going to fund our society, then we should all be in on it. Why leave it up to chance? We don't leave other things up to chance. So it is taking advantage of and capitalizing on a mistake. Right. And so I don't feel great about that. I looked at the numbers annually, about $80 million worth of payoffs are unclaimed. So this is just, 1 million out of 80 million per year. So this is not an insignificant number. But really the $2 billion that goes into education from lottery revenues, which is about 33% of what comes in, funds different programmings. Maybe, that $2 billion should go to schools, no matter what. That's another kind of arbitrary number that just is based on who plays the lottery. We should just be committing to funding all the programs that we need.
Oh, gosh, I really just don't want to go there.
I'm talking to the economists here in the room, the way that these economic decisions happen on a personal level but are affecting our entire society.
Yeah, I feel that people participate in the lottery because some people get utility after the notion of the dream, and then saying, the argument we had over individual mandate for buying health insurance and saying, okay, you're all going to contribute a part towards this lottery. The legal challenges would be, I don't know who they'd come from. These days, it's really hard to predict in politics.
I think one thing you can always predict is that there's always a legal challenge to everything.
It's true. I love being on this show with people who are smarter than me. It's so much fun. I love just sitting here between the two of you and just listening. It's amazing.
Notice she said the two of you.
Well, I'm not between you, Craig. You're in front of me. Now that the audience can see that.
Panel, a Houston woman Tuesday owned up to submitting more than 100 fraudulent disaster relief applications to FEMA and unemployment applications from agencies in other states, obtaining more than $600,000 in the process. As Houston Public Media's Kyle McClenigan reported this week, Cora Custard pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She faces up to 5 years in federal prison and a $250,000 fine, or at least up to that amount, though something tells me she has just the right forms to fill out to cover that. Custard submitted the false and fraudulent loan applications for herself and others between 2020 and 2021 and used Facebook to advertise her scheme. I guess when she rose to admit her guilt to a judge this week, it was Custard's last stand. Boo. Just get it all out.
I love that you booed yourself. That's my favorite part.
I booed.
That was you?
That was Raul doing the booing.
Oh, okay. Sometimes it's hard to tell.
A Houston woman admits committing fraud to acquire more than $600,000 during the first year of the pandemic. Is this good, bad, or ugly? Jessica.
I definitely think this is ugly. I'm not sure that there's there's another way to go about this. These were funds that were set aside for people who needed them, and this woman took advantage of that. I don't think that there's any other way of looking at it, especially with everything that happened during that time frame. Any type of FEMA necessity just means that there's a lot of people who are hurting, and they just got hurt even more by this person. So, I mean, at least for me, there's not another way of looking at it than it's just ugly.
All right. Good, bad, or ugly? Raul.
Well, it's good that she's being prosecuted.
That's true.
Hopefully the state gets the funds back. It, I think, brings up a point about taking advantage of disasters and profiting on misery and difficulty, and really the good faith effort the government has in trying to help everyone get through challenging times. Which brings up my annual critique of Centerpoint and how these disasters keep coming, and we're all having to pay for mismanagement and for the lack of preparation. And when an individual does it, it's easy to identify it. But when it's happening, on a big corporate level, sometimes taking advantage of difficult situations gets diffuse and hard to identify. So yes, for holding people accountable. And what I would like to see is holding corporations and larger government entities accountable as well, because we all deserve to be on that life raft together.
Okay, good, bad, or ugly, Vivian.
Yeah, I'll agree with Jessica and Raul on this. So good that she confessed. On the other hand, I hope they throw the book at her. This issue of fraud against the government recurs many times. And what bothers me so much, studying healthcare, there's constantly people committing fraud against Medicare and Medicaid. The problem is it then harms the public's trust in the system, and they assume that most of the dollars are going towards fraudsters, which is not true. In spite of the large amounts that these people are managing to scam, most of the dollars go towards good, but it leads to this public sentiment that everyone's committing government against the fraud and no one deserves the dollars. And clearly in the pandemic, we had a significant amount of benefit from these particular COVID funds, and they went to where they were supposed to go.
Well, and you're right, it shakes people's trust in these programs that have overwhelming benefit, but just it's those bad actors that end up getting all of the attention. And not only does it shake confidence, but it increases the bureaucracy and the paperwork that we have to go through, the hoops you have to jump just to get what is the bare minimum needed. And so it's, if you see the amount of paperwork and the number, how often you have to sign up for Medicare or Medicaid biannually just to get basic health care that everyone deserves, these are the ways the government are trying to ensure that it's going to the right people. But in doing so, we're paying a social cost of the time and again, bureaucratic mistakes that happen and all of the suffering that goes along with increasing the bureaucracy to access those funds.
The real shame of it is she could have made more money if she had just bothered to sign and turn in her lottery ticket.
That's true. Very true.
Well, she could also make a podcast about it or a reality TV show and double her money.
Oh, she probably will at the end of it. I mean, what's interesting to me is that, I hate to say it, Craig, I know that you're a member of the media, but the stories about the negative things that happen are far more interesting than when things work right. So when things are working correctly, that's good. It's status quo. We don't need to hear about that. But when something breaks or something goes wrong, like with either of these stories, like either with the lottery ticket not being claimed or, someone taking advantage of the system, that's when it's interesting and that's when it becomes newsworthy. So that's what stays in our brains.
Okay, so tell me this. Would you listen to a radio show that told you that 70 people went to the DMV yesterday and they stood in line, and when they got to the front of the line, they got what they needed and then went home?
Absolutely not. I'm not saying that the media is bad. I'm just saying that that's how it works.
Yeah.
It's the more interesting story.
It's what is news.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's, yeah.
Exactly. That, and I didn't mean that as a y'all suck, because you don't. Y'all cover incredible things that we need to hear about. But I think that's more on humans than it is necessarily on the media. We're not interested in the status
Did you hear
quo.
her? She said the media is not even human. My God.
You know what, Craig? You keep getting offended at everything that I'm saying.
I take offense to that.
A little bit.
I don't know. Maybe once a quarter you need to have like the opposite of Houston pet peeves.
Interesting you bring this up, because your co-panelist, Jessica Brown, was on a segment we did on occasion called Happy Houston.
I loved that segment.
And do you recall what happened?
It was like pulling teeth to get people to share their information.
Bingo.
Yeah, it really was. And I mean, I would actively seek things out with friends. We would put it out there. It was so hard.
Nobody wants to share good news. Everybody loves to complain. It's
true.
what you said. It's human nature.
We need to practice gratitude, and we need to appreciate what we have. And I think you could have a sort of gratitude segment from in the future, and people can be thankful for things.
November.
What are you thankful?
November.
Okay, that's the Thanksgiving segment.
Just to be clear, Craig is one of my favorite people.
Oh, thank you. See? She thinks I'm human after all. Jessica Brown is co-director of Station Theater. Vivian Ho is a health economist at Rice University and Baylor College of Medicine. And Raul Ramos is associate professor of history at the University of Houston. Jessica, Vivian, Raul, thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Craig.
you, Craig.
Thank you, Craig.